are there any mistakes that you feel like you've made that you've learned from that you think that maybe our listeners could benefit from?
So actually, I think there's a very big mistake that I did not make.
Oh,
And I think that could be very beneficial. But then there's a lot of learnings along the way. If I want to, summarize those learnings, I think they fall under three different key lessons. And the first one is don't wait for the perfect time to start. If you're thinking of starting a YouTube channel or whatever it is, don't wait to perfect your craft to start. Just jump right in. And I think that's the biggest mistake I did not make. I just jumped right in because the only way you will get better is by doing it. So you learn a lot from doing, from yourself, from the process, from feedback from others. And I truly believe the only way you do get better is by just starting and doing it over and over and over again. So lesson one is, just start. Done is better than perfect.
mm-hmm.
And speaking of perfect, that's lesson two for me. Don't aim for perfect. I think that's a very big mistake. I try to follow the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, in my life in general, but also in YouTube. And I truly believe that as someone who did in the past aim for perfection, we can never attain perfection, but I put in a lot of effort to try to get as close to perfect as possible. And life has taught me that that's not very smart, because 80% good is good enough. The amount of time it's going to take you to go from 80% good to 100% good is so huge that it's not even worth it. So I now aim for that 80% good. There's a lot of things that I recognize in my videos that I would have liked they were better, be it in my content, my delivery, my editing, my B-roll. There's a lot of things, but I'm fine not perfecting those, because that extra 20% jump is going to take 80% more of your time, so that the marginal benefit is so
Right.
low. So lesson two is don't aim for perfect. Practice the art of being content with 80% good, because it's going to be good enough, and you're better off spending that time you've just gained doing something else, or creating more content, or even resting, because you do need rest. And then the third lesson is about deliberate practice versus mindless repetition. So I was saying that you only get better by doing things on and on and on and over and over and over. There's a small asterisk, in my opinion, to that. You have to have that mindset that you want to get better, because otherwise, if you're just, it's mindless repetition. If you're doing the same thing over and over again, there's only so much growth you can make. So, I mean, I think if you're pushing a rock up a hill, you can do that for 20 years. You're going to get stronger. You're going to get there a bit faster, but there's only so much growth you can make. But if you have the mindset, if you wanting to grow and become better, you'll start thinking of ways to achieve that. Maybe you'll start putting some logs under the rock to reduce the friction to help you push it up the hill. Eventually, you'll create wheels and whatnot. And I think this is really important, and I've applied that from day one. If I go back and look at my earliest video, I cringe, and that's awesome. That's great.
I think
Because
everyone
that's
does when
yes.
they look at their first
But
video.
that's great. I think it shouldn't be any other way, because this is the mark of growth, of getting better, that you have gotten so much better. And I'm sure if I look at my videos in 2 years, I'm going to cringe as well. But that's awesome. That's how you know that you are getting better. And I applied it, and you can apply it in so many different areas. So one of the areas, for example, is setting up my studio. So I live in Paris. Apartments aren't that great. Think New York City, small apartments. So I do not have a dedicated studio space, which means I need to set up and take things down. And when I first started, I had big softbox light setup that are, studio lights are huge that I had to, set up and take down. My camera, I used to put it on a tripod, trying to find the right angle. My background was my desk. So I needed to declutter my desk. So it used to take me 30 minutes to set up, which was a lot of time, considering that's the thing I have the least of time. With time, I started thinking, how can I cut down that setup time? So I got LED panels that are very slim, for example, instead of the huge soft boxes. And I set up my desk in a way where I have them on swivel arms that I can just hide behind my monitors, so they're always there. For my camera, instead of, tripod and trying to figure out the angle and whatnot, I got a desk mount, and I set that up with a quick release plate, and I just popped the camera in place. So I cut down from a 30-minute setup time to 30 seconds. And, if you're making content always, that 30-minute a day is a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
In editing, for example, I made it a point to try to learn a lot of shortcuts to make my editing much faster. Even the process of how I edit my videos, I found ways to make things much more streamlined, faster. I'm using AI today to help with my editing. So I've also cut down and optimized that process. So it has always been trying to get better, get faster, more efficient. And I think that has helped me grow, knowing that I am juggling this with a full-time job. And I think if I didn't have that mindset, if, deliberate practice, if trying to grow and get better and find any opportunity to get better, I wouldn't be here today with my YouTube and where I am.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, Rawan, that is some great advice. I really hope our listeners pay attention to that. I wanted to comment on the first two that you mentioned. So just starting out, you just need to jump in and just go for it. I think that is really great. And case in point is, your video about the AR glasses. You didn't have the best equipment, but that turned out to be your best video. So someone
Absolutely.
starting out won't have the best equipment. But if your content is good, it can still grow. So you just
Absolutely.
need to jump in and get going.
And just to be clear, I'm not advocating, grab your iPhone's front cam because the quality is not good. Sit in a poorly lit room with no microphone and just start. You have to have a bare minimum, but you don't need much. Your phone is more than capable of great content. You don't need much. Just start and
Right.
take it all in and learn as you go along and get better with time.
Yeah, learn as much as you can and improve your quality as you go. But when you're first starting out, you just need to start learning. And the best way to do that is to just start making videos.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing, the 80-20 rule that you talked about, I've never called it the 80-20 rule, but I've kind of lived by that principle as well, especially with video editing, because that's what I do for my job mainly. And, I see a lot of, video editors who post stuff on social media and it's like, oh, check out this really cool edit that I did. And it's really fun to watch those type of editing skills. But when it comes to making YouTube videos, you don't need all the fancy edits. Most of the time, the general audience won't even notice like a
100%.
specific editing thing. That's just something you as the editor will notice.
100%. And I can relate to that because in my early days, I did some freelance work where part of the things I taught myself and I started doing was graphic design. So I used to do some design work, and I would spend hours just, nudging the copy by a millimeter or changing the color by a shade. And I used to ask my friends or my parents or whatnot, which one is better? And they'd look at me, they're the same. What are you talking about? And only I can tell. And at that point in time, I hadn't come to that conclusion of that 80-20. I would spend so much time creating 10 different versions that are so close to each other that it really doesn't matter. But yeah, I'm glad I got to the point where I know not to do that anymore.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time as long as you just go make it 80% good. and
Exactly.
then call it done. Uh, a lot of people won't notice that 20%, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make. So, but that is great advice. And that kind of segues into our final question. And I like to ask this to all of our guests, especially if you've watched our previous episodes, you'll know what this question is. But a lot of YouTubers have different experiences with YouTube, and I know that they find some things work better for themselves versus other YouTubers. And so the question is there any myths about YouTube or misconceptions that you think are true or false that you've found from your own experience doing YouTube?
Absolutely. And I think I see a lot of people who aspire to be YouTubers or content creators. And I've seen that firsthand, even talking to people and friends who have the misconception that success is easy. So, in the sense that they look at the few success cases
Hmm.
who actually made it, and they don't see the thousands, if not millions, who did not. And they expect, because these people make it look easy, they have the misconception that they can just start and it's a easy way to make a lot of money, which is not the case for sure, because those success cases that people see, you're just seeing the end result. You're not seeing what it took for them to get there. You're not seeing the months and years of grinding, of late nights, of sweat for them to get there. You're just seeing tip of the iceberg. They're actually there. So, and obviously we all know, nothing in life worth having comes easy. There's no shortcuts in life. Otherwise, everyone would be doing that. So I guess my message would be, as someone who has been trying to make it, it's not to discourage people. It's just to set the expectations. If you set your mind to it, you definitely can achieve it, but don't expect, overnight or even within a year, maybe a year is a lot of time, depending on how much time you put in, but don't expect for it to be a quick way to become big and make a career out of it. And it's like going to the gym. You can go to the gym, spend 5 hours and 10 hours. You're not going to see any results in the first days and weeks and even months.
Right.
It's just being consistent, being determined, grinding, and just setting your mind to it. And eventually you're going to get there. It's just laws of physics. You're going to get there. If you keep determined to get to where you want to get, you will get there. That was, I think that's the main message I would have on that. And the challenging part here is that there's no guarantees you're going to get there. And that's the tough part for me starting. I told you earlier, I never imagined I can make a career out of it, let alone start making money. And today I'm halfway there, because when you're walking down that path, imagine you're walking in a desert. There's nothing around you, long winding roads, and you see nothing at the end except sand. But you got to keep walking. You don't know if you're going to get to somewhere worth getting. But you keep walking, and eventually, if you keep walking, you're going to start seeing, some trees and flowers on the sides of the road. And this is where I'm at today. I still didn't get to that oasis at the end, but I start to see some patches of water, some flowers, some green trees. But the challenging part is you got to keep walking until you start seeing something, and don't despair. If you don't see anything, that's fine. Keep walking. Eventually, you're going to see something.
Yeah, that is great advice. And as you were explaining that, it got to me thinking, like, you mentioned the iceberg, like you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. All the really successful YouTubers that have millions of subscribers, they're the minority. And I think it'd be interesting if there was a way to see, like, visually the amount of channels that are on YouTube overall and how many of them have, like, not that many subscribers. I think it would really put into
And I
perspective.
bet you it's a huge percentage for sure. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think so many people see the successful YouTubers and they're like, oh, I can do that too. And so they
Yeah.
start a YouTube channel. But like you mentioned, there's a lot of work that goes into the behind the scenes and making that content and the years of time and dedication it takes to grow to that point. I also think there are some YouTubers that have been doing it long enough that they started when YouTube was, brand new. And so they
Yes.
were kind of in the gold rush time
100%.
period. And so that helped them grow a lot. But nowadays, it definitely takes a lot of time and dedication.
100%. And those who were fortunate enough to have started in the early days, supply was low. If I go back to that supply demand thing, supply was low back then, and they were able to ride that wave. Anyone starting today, it's a saturated market. There's a lot of
Yep.
competition, and it's not as easy as it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Not to diminish all the effort these guys did. I'm sure it was a lot of work,
Hmm.
but it was a bit easier, I think, for them because they were swimming in a relatively, there were less sharks, let's say, or whales in that
Right.
ocean back
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, thanks for Juan for that advice. That is something that I think our listeners will definitely benefit from.